this is a wonderful opportunity for Lewisham to do some amazing things. Waltham Forest did some great things, and through it, culture has really lifted what's going on there. Brent have done some amazing things, and it's really lifted, it's really set the profile for culture in that borough. And the same thing can happen here, and I know it because I've worked in Lewisham for years. This is a fantastic borough with wonderful people and wonderful creativity. So if we all come together, we'll be able to do something pretty amazing next year. Thank you. Andy.
Great. You can give them a round of applause if you want to. So we're going to introduce you to the funders one at a time, obviously. They'll each speak for 15 minutes, and then there'll be 5 minutes for questions. If you're listening or watching on Zoom, then please put your questions into the chat, and we'll try and take some of those questions as well as questions in the room. Inevitably, there won't be time to answer all of the questions, and particularly if your question comes up on Zoom, then we will try to answer it later or in the next few days. So I'm going to introduce you straight away to Patricia, who's from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. You can give her a round of applause as well if you want to.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you very much for the invitation to share with all of you some of the priorities of our funding and how we can support communities around heritage. So really, thank you very much, and it's fantastic to be here face to face again. It feels a bit strange, but it's really great. My name is Patricia Leach, and here my colleague, we will doing the presentation jointly. You wanna? Thank you, Jasmine. We are engagement managers, and our main role is basically to support any pre-applicants and provide some guidance so you can really put proposals that can be really competitive and really have at the heart the involvement of communities to explore heritage. So what we do, next one please, thank you. So what we do, can I ask, do you play the lottery, the national lottery? Hands up please. Great, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you, and myself as well. Thank you very much, because thanks to you and all those people that play the lottery, we have been able to distribute over £8 billion across the UK for 49,000 projects. This is really, basically, we distribute the income that comes, part of the income that comes from the sales of lottery tickets. So it's really important. And all the income basically is invested in good causes. So we mainly fund projects that connect people to the heritage of the UK. So if you are thinking of developing a heritage proposal, there is a question here. Sorry, I know I need to keep, am I in the wrong place? Can I move? Is this better? Am I?
Yeah, you'll have to bear with us a little bit because trying to film and do the presentation is a bit tricky. So presenters will try and move around so you can...
Yes, but please tell me and then I'll move from one place to another so I do not obstruct. Thank you. So I was saying, if you are thinking to develop a proposal for the National Lottery Heritage Fund, the key really starting point is to think about that what is the heritage of your project and how you are going to connect and engage the different communities with that heritage. So that's really fundamental. And we want that all the projects really reach a wider range of people. That doesn't mean more numbers, but it means groups that you normally don't engage. So that's really important. The next slide is about our heritage grant programs, and I won't go into detail because we will send you the presentation. Just to highlight two elements from this slide. The first one is we have three sizes of grants, so small, medium, and large. The small grants are from 3,000 to 10,000, the medium ones from 10,000 to 250, and then over 250. The key point really is if you are thinking to apply for a grant between 3 to 10K, this is for projects of 1 year, and don't worry, there are no deadlines. The important thing is that the project is really properly planned. And for grants of 10,000 to 250, you can submit what we call a project inquiry form, which is an outline of your project, and we will be able to give you some support. With the small grants, basically, you look at our guidance in the website, and you can just submit the application. But you can, if you are working with any of our priority groups, which I will go into detail in a sec, we will be able to support, to provide like one-to-one support to applicants. Next one, please. We have some priorities in terms of groups, of geographical areas, but also in terms of the type of heritage. So here our priorities, again, if you think to develop a proposal, and when you start to think who you are going to involve, these are the groups we know are underserved in heritage, and we would like to see them engaged in heritage projects. So young people between 11 to 25, ethnic community groups, the disabled people, LGBT people, and people that live on low income. So think about who you, from those groups, or from other groups that are underserved, and we as a funder, we are not aware of, and just make a strong case in your application. So in terms of our support, I have already said for small grants, our guidance on the website. For a medium size, just submit your project inquiry and we will give you some feedback. We also run some workshops for first-time applicants. So if any of you, and I think I have spoken with a couple of people now that are interested in developing a project with one of these priority groups, and so just submit an outline and we will be able to support you. But also you can sign up to a workshop that we are running for people that are going to work with priority applicants. I forgot to mention that the other key priority is community heritage. So it's heritage that really explore the histories of communities, and Lewisham is very rich. It's a very diverse borough. I think it's 47% of the communities are from diverse ethnic community groups, and probably some of these histories have not been documented. So we would really encourage projects that explore the local heritage and the local community histories. Great, let's move to what is heritage. To be able to apply, this is really a crucial point. So you will need to decide what is your heritage and make a strong case, because we don't know what is the heritage that is important for the community. So here is a really broad sort of definition, but you will need to decide to define it in your application. So we said heritage is the people, things, experiences, memories, and places that communities value and want to pass on to future generations. I was just talking, I think with Natalie, I forgot your name, sorry, and she was mentioning about a community leader that has been very important in Lewisham. So that is the type of maybe histories that you would like to document, or for instance, the histories of a particular community, and that's what we refer to as community heritage. We also fund projects that focus on nature, natural heritage, for instance, projects that will preserve a particular habitat or will develop and engage communities with projects related to the preservation of a particular species in the nature reserves of Lewisham or in the parks. And natural heritage is also one of our priorities. Culture and traditions, so we fund heritage that is related to, for instance, festivals that are important to the communities, a particular craft that has been learned and passed on from one generation to another orally, other dances, for instance, that have been learned through oral histories. And I think the slide is, you cannot see, but the last one on the left, on the right, on the left-hand side, is about heritage exploring collections. So collections, archives, for instance, a particular collection of photography about a particular community, or a collection of objects that has never been explored by the community. Industrial heritage, and there are lots of, I was reading, for instance, about the history of the tram in Lewisham, which disappeared, is my understanding. And so anything that is related to transport, to the docklands, and historic buildings as well. And finally, before I pass to my colleague, I will just mention, she's going to take us through all the case studies of projects that we have funded it, and hopefully you will be inspired by them. So you can see how all this, what I have said, looks in a project. Jasmine, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is this? Yeah, that's all right. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to talk you through essentially the key points that Patricia just mentioned if you're going to apply to us. And when you do apply, you'll have to kind of get across your whole idea in about 800 words, which is not very easy. So the important thing is to remember to be concise. So first thing is obviously the heritage. It's the main thing. And it could be, for example, looking at the memories of the Bangladeshi community who came to Lewisham during the 1950s. So specific group of people, specific memories, specific time period. Another thing is you'll need to tell us the target groups that you want to engage in the project. So, and if these are groups that are part of our priority groups, then even better. So again, that's people from the LGBT plus community, people from minority ethnic groups, people from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and people who are disabled. And consultation's a good one. We'd expect people, or hope that people do some consultation before applying. So that's talking to people if you want to engage. Nice. And see how much interest there is in the project. So that can be just through talking to people or through doing surveys, which would be great because then you have evidence to show that people are interested. And the other thing is activities. So all projects are going to need to have activities that will allow you to engage with people. This can be things like training people, it can be workshops for traditional craft workshops, it can be making archival trips or recording oral histories. And another thing that we expect, thank you, is we hope all projects would consider how they can help improve the environment. So it can be something as simple as suggesting that people use public transport when they're coming to your events. And then lastly, COVID, which I'm sure no one wanted me to mention, but COVID is still a thing. So if you think about ways you can essentially safeguard and have backup plans for your project. So for example, if you wanted to do an exhibition, could it also be done online as well? Similar to what we're doing today, actually. So yeah, and then I'll just talk you through some case studies. So this was the Celebrating and Sharing Tamil Heritage project, which focused on the memories of the Tamil community within Lewisham. And they looked at a collection of 22 objects that were significant to the community as well. So what they did was they worked largely with members of the Tamil community, and they had events, and they did activities such as collecting oral histories. They trained 2 people on traditional storytelling. They took people to visits to museums, and they also worked with young people by creating digital resources, which they then distributed to 60 primary schools. And another one was the retired Caribbean nurses who served in the NHS from 1949. And so this project, they did a consultation with previous nurses who came to the UK and came to, I believe it was Newham and somewhere else. I want to say Hackney. And they came specifically to be trained and to work in the NHS. And so they had consultation with them, and they held things such as reminiscence sessions and they collected 60 oral histories on their experiences of working for the NHS. And the whole project kind of ended in a final big exhibition at the Hackney Museum. And this was a really cool one. So this one was exploring the history of or people who had influenced the grime genre. Yes, the grime genre, which people would think that grime is more art and not necessarily heritage, but it can be if you come at it from the right angle. And so they worked a lot with young people who were trained on oral history taking, filmmaking, and then the wider community were also involved through gigs and workshops. And go to the next one, please. I'm going to skip that one just for lack of time. So the next one, please. So this is a project that was looking at one of our priorities, which is nature and landscape. And there's a typo there because it says garden, which is not meant to be there. But so this was looking at the restoration of an Edwardian cascade and rock garden. So even if you're looking at something that's largely capital works or restoration works, as long as you find a way to get people involved in it, that's fine. So they had many volunteers who would help them in site clearance and planting and in archival research. They also had public tours and walking tours that helped explore the heritage of the site, and they also worked with primary schools and secondary schools. And I'll just say that's all the case studies I have for you, but hopefully you'll see that from the ones we've looked at, that the thing they all had in common was they had a clear heritage focus. They had clear groups that they were working with, and they all had activities that were enabling those groups to be engaged with the heritage in their project. Any questions?
I don't think we've got any questions on Zoom at the moment, but any questions in the room, you'll probably need to take your mask off and say it from where you are, and then I'll repeat it into the mic. Only time to take 2 or 3 questions. Barbara.
Yeah, I mean, it's great the examples you have there. They're quite large sums of money, so the organisations, were they established organisations that were able to secure that kind of funding, or could it be coming together?
So it's a question about how established the organisations were that received the funding that was being talked about earlier on, or whether they were new groups or groups that came together. Let's take another question as well. Yep. Okay, there's a question about the one-to-one support sessions and the level of support that people can expect to receive. Been told to take a step back. Okay, and we'll take one more question. Tracy, yeah. Okay, so a question about whether older people are included in the criteria for this funding. And just to say, we have got a range of funders here who will have different criteria, so hopefully you won't get missed out. So who wants to take those 3 questions?
Thank you. First question, we fund community groups. What is important is that they have a clear set of rules, that they have 2 people, signatories, and a bank account. And obviously that you can demonstrate you are engaged with the community. So you don't have to be established for many years as long as you are really engaged. The second question was about the support, and we provide, if you are working with a priority group, we can provide one-to-one support and give you some guidance, but also the website has really good guidance, and also you can send an outline of the project and we will give you some feedback to help you develop the proposal. So yeah. The third question was about working with older people, thank you. Priority groups are those that we indicated. However, if you know priority groups that we are unaware and you make a strong case in your application that is a group that has not been involved with heritage, then you can make a strong case because it's older people will be a priority group in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you saw in that example about history of nurses come to the country, there are older people involved in that. So yes, I think that we probably need to move straight on to the next funder. This is going to be a bit frustrating, I suspect. Maybe I'll just mention, just because it came up about support, that Lewisham Local run a very good support system for people. So if you've never been involved in funding particularly, then it's worth contacting Lewisham Local to join with them. So my mind's gone blank on who's coming next. Is it you next? Okay, so Sam, come up next. And you're from the Community Foundation, aren't you? London Community Foundation. Just to mention before Sam starts talking, Sam, one of the funders that Sam will talk about is Deptford Challenge Trust. And Deptford Challenge Trust are particularly committed to using part of their budget for next year to support Borough of Culture. So if you're in their catchment area, you're perhaps going to talk about that, then it's worth considering that.
Thank you. Bear with me, I've never used a microphone before, so this is... No, I know. Where have I been all my life? So I'm Sam, I'm a programme manager at the London Community Foundation. I'm sure some of you have come across us before, probably had grants from us. Next slide, please. So we specialise in supporting community organisations, community-based organisations that are focused on working with disadvantaged communities in London. We tend to support smaller organisations. We tend to give grants that are on the smaller end. I think our average, I'm going to make up a statistic now, I think our average is about £13,000 for our average grant size, but I'm not entirely sure. So we run grants programs for all sorts of people. So we run for the public sector. We will run grant programs for individuals who want to give money to people in their community. And we do programs for corporates who want to do generally something good in areas they're working in. So a really wide range, and all of the different funds have different priorities. They run to different timetables, which is really good because it means there's normally something going on at any one time, but it does mean kind of you need to keep on top of what's coming out. And last year we awarded over 22 million, but our average, that was about half of that was COVID grants. So normally we're around £10 million worth of grants in a year. Next slide, please. So who can apply? All of our programs, as I said, have different priorities, but these are universal across almost all of the programs. So you have to be a constituted organisation with a minimum of 3 trustees. You have to have a governing document, and you have to have a bank account in the name of the organisation that has 2 signatories to sign off transactions. And yeah, accounts or a record of income, a safeguarding policy that meets our criteria, and you can find out about that in the website, on our website. But we can also we will work with people on safeguarding policies if they're not up to what we need. And then you have to be, obviously, working in London. Next slide, please. So if you want to look at our available grants, the best way to find out is on our website, and you can see it circled up there, available grants, and then the arrows are pointing to open. So that's how you see if a program's running currently, but we usually have up all the programs that we run throughout the year. So if it says open, then you know it's open for applications now. If it doesn't, then it's one to bear in mind for the future. And then you can read more about it. Next slide, please. Don't really need that much explanation of a web page, do you? And then this is what the web pages will look like for each of the funds. And the important bit is these red buttons to the side. So that's where you'll find the detailed fund guidelines, information about how to apply, and the bottom one of those, which says apply here, that is a link to an online application. And all of our funds, almost all of them, are online applications. They're normally a standard application, maybe slightly different for each one. But if you've applied to us before, you can likely use some of the information for other applications as well. I'm not going to go through this because I think it's pretty standard, but this is our sort of, you'll get this when the slides go around as well, this is our funding process. And depending on the fund can take different amounts of time from the beginning to the end. So the shortest ones will be a few weeks, the longest ones are the Deptford Challenge Trust that I'm sure you're all interested in. Applications open in December, and I think the grants go out around May time, so that's quite a long process. But we are trying to let people know earlier on in the process whether they've been whether they've been shortlisted or not. So yeah, I know that's kind of really useful for people's planning and things to know as soon as possible if they're not going to get funding. Next slide, please. So these are some of the things that the assessors look at when we're reading application forms. So some of the things to think about. I think probably overlap with some of the things you guys have already talked about. We'll be looking at the organisation's purpose, so what it is you're actually setting out to do. Impact, so what if you've got a track record, what you've achieved, how you monitor your impact, those kind of things. We look at your people, so we look at who's leading the organisation, what their experience is, staffing, your board. We also, one of the really important things that we look at is whether your management, your leadership, your board represent the people that you're working with, because we know that's really, really valuable. So we want to see that there are people throughout the organisation representing the groups that you're supporting. Yeah, finance operations. Yeah, and I suppose the most important one is the bottom one as well, local knowledge and relationships. So we want to know that you really know your community, you're really embedded in your community, and you know what the needs of your local community are, what you've developed, your organisation is responding to that. We do sometimes fund organisations working across London or working across a couple of boroughs, but generally what we're working with are organisations that are really rooted in one area and know their communities really, really well. Thank you. Yeah, so these are a few things, again, kind of echoing the last slide, things that make a really strong funding application to us. A really clear fit with the fund criteria. So as I said before, we have lots of different funds. So if it's a wellbeing fund in Lambeth, don't apply for an arts project in Lewisham. Like, read the fund guidelines, see what the priority of the fund are, and respond to that. Sounds really obvious, but you'd be amazed how often people don't. Yeah, we'll look at how realistic your plans are, what expertise you've got to deliver, what experience you've got. You don't always have to have experience, but what kind of ability you've got to deliver the project you're planning. That your proposed outcomes are realistic, and that you've got the measures in place to tell us at the end of it if you've achieved that or not, so how you're going to monitor anything that you do. Achievable timelines. We normally say on the guidelines when funding will be available. Think about how long it will take you if you need to recruit to get someone in place, how long it will take to publicise the project, to get people through the door. Yeah, a lot of our funding is for 1 year. We're trying, I know that's not what people want, we're trying to make as many as we can multi-year, longer term, but realistically a lot are 1 year. So just looking to see what you can really achieve within a year. Solid evidence of need. Yeah, we want to see that you've researched it, you are responding to something that is needed within your community. And the last one there, the clear budget, and we encourage all organisations to fund at the real living wage. So that's 10.85 at the moment, I think, or above, but as a minimum. It's not a requirement, but we do strongly encourage that you budget all salaries at that rate or above. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. And if you want to look on our website, we do have some resources there and signposting to other places where you can read about things like safeguarding policies and stuff like that before applying, or email us. We do respond. Next slide, please. So these are some funds that are available at the moment that may be of interest. The first one is the London Impact Awards, which are grants of 30,000, called awards, but essentially grants of £30,000 in 3 categories. So the Standout Women's Champion, Best Emerging Voice, and the Collaboration Award, and they close quite soon, so that's on the 8th of October. And they're open to organisations with a turnover between 100,000 and 2 million, and they must be women-led, and by that we've defined it as 75% of staff and 75% of service users must be women. That is the definition we've used for these purposes. I'm sure people have different definitions of what they would think women-led is, but they will prioritise organisations led by and for marginalised communities. Thank you. And the next one is the Peabody Community Fund, which you may have come across. And I looked at, you can look on the Peabody website to see if you're supporting communities that are Peabody residents. When I looked up, the main area in Lewisham was the Vanguard estate. So I don't know if that's somewhere where people are working. So they've got, depending on the size of the organisation, there are different grant sizes you can access. Lewisham is one of the priority boroughs this year, but the fund runs, I think, 4 times a year. The Peabody Community Fund is open. And it prioritises activities that are working with Peabody residents. And there's quite broad criteria for it. Other than that the majority of people benefiting from the work must be Peabody residents. And the 3 themes are healthy, wealthy, and happy. Thank you. And finally, save the best till last, the Deptford Challenge Trust. So this is runs annually, running for a lot of years now. It's a project that works, a fund that prioritises an area of Deptford and New Cross. I'll show you a map in a minute that shows where the priority area is. And the majority of people benefiting from funding must be in that area. The project, they've got some kind of main themes, so education and skills, community cohesion and social inclusion, health and well-being, and strengthening the DCT area. But as you can tell, those are fairly broad criteria, kind of lots of projects fit under that heading, and they're very keen to support all sorts within the local area and have over time funded a whole range of projects. Things that they really like include partnerships and things which are going to have a long-lasting impact or a legacy in the DCT area. Can I just have the last one for 1 sec? So it changed last year. Previously it was only project costs, but now they will fund core costs and capital costs. And it's worth saying normally it's around £270,000 that they give out annually, and normally the timeline runs December, as I said, to May. So applications would close kind of late January, early February. There's been some changes going on with the fund this year, so this is kind of subject to possible change. But they've assured me this is the timeline that and the budget they're aiming to work for. But just to make you aware that it's possible that the timeline may shift slightly on it, and it's possible that the budget won't quite be the £270,000 this year. But they're hoping to move back to that, hoping that it will continue at that moving forward. Sorry, and then the final slide, this is the area, I don't know how well you can see that map, but this is the DCT Priority Area. So as you can see, it's kind of Deptford. It does come all the way up into Lewisham. It gets about as far as Lewisham Shopping Centre. So last year, the year before last, we funded the Migration Museum, which is in Deptford Shopping Centre, which sort of just about made it into the cut-off of the area. And that, again, that is on the website. So it's on our website, and the Deptford Challenge Trust has its own website as well. So you can find all this information, all the details about previously funded projects are also on there if you're interested in looking to see what kinds of things have been supported. And oh, yeah, this is the last thing. If you want to hear about projects that are about funds that are opening up at the London Community Foundation, the best thing to do is to sign up to our e-news. So this is the bottom of our website. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a link there that's circled in red at the moment. Sign up to our newsletter. It only goes out every month or every couple of months, so it's not one that will bombard you and fill up your inbox with junk, but it will tell you what's coming up in the next few months and anything that's open and any deadlines. So if you want to know, I would highly recommend signing up to that to find out about any opportunities, including when the DCT opens. And I think that is, yeah, that's the end. Any questions?
Please. Which slide?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I should have said, I think my email address is spelled wrongly as well.
I'd just like to say, this is really important, guys. You do not have to fill up your phones with images. We will promise to get these round to everybody, because you're going to be looking on your phones and Christmas will come up and suddenly you'll have an image of this and you won't want that as part of your Christmas card collection. So honestly, we will promise to get round all of the slides.
Can I also just say, my email address is incorrectly spelled on it.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry. I should say, sorry, I think my email address was incorrectly spelt on the slides. It does not have 2 S's at the beginning. And anyone that's in the room, please take one of my cards. I've had this since I started at LCF about 7 years ago, so the more I can get rid of, the better. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, if I just take 3 questions. Okay, what question have we got from the Zoom? DCT funding for Borough of Culture. Jonathan?
Yeah, talk about eligibility. Do you make exceptions from companies like mine? I run limited company by guarantee. I'm a sole director, sole employee, and signature.
Okay, and have we got another question here at the back? Hi. Yeah, I think we might have to take that, or I'm not going to put that on you, to be honest. But we will come back. Yeah, it's a really key point. So DCT, are they putting some money aside specifically for London Borough of Culture, and about people who are companies limited by guarantee with 1 person?
Yes. Okay, so in terms of DCT, they were committed to supporting the Borough of Culture. I'm not sure if they had put an amount on that. Are you aware that they had? Yeah. Yeah, my understanding was they were very much committed to supporting the Borough of Culture. Yeah, there will be funding put towards that, but I don't know if it's as formal as an actual amount committed. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, no, those are hard. Yeah, no, I'm afraid that those are we've actually, the eligibility, we've just had that agreed by our board as standard eligibility criteria across all of our funds, I'm afraid. Unfortunately not, no, I'm afraid not. Sorry.
Yes. Hello, my friends. Sorry.
I would like to say that the whole idea of the Borough of Culture, as far as I understood it, was inclusivity. Now, a lot of the groups who are going to want to put on events and things like that are going to be new. They're not necessarily going to have a track record of having done things over the years. Some will have done some things, but a lot of the people that we'd like to get into it will not have that criteria. So in a sense, you're really ruling out anybody other than registered known corporations and associations.
Thank you. I just want to take that. Sorry, can I just round of applause for Sam? You can sit down now. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, I think part of the reason we're doing this evening is to make sure that there are different funding streams. Some are going to be for those that are constituted organisations that have been going for a long time. There are other funding streams that are going to be available for new organisations or organisations which don't necessarily have the constitutions that we're looking to do. So we're going to do that. And sorry, Madam, to your point at the back here, I agree. I think funders and the way that funding works needs to be looked at, and that's got to be conversations that happen within all the councils and within my organisation, within the GLA as well. It needs to change. I know that we're really short of time, and we've got to get on to the next one. I'm so sorry. If you've got questions, we'll try and get them in the break, or we'll come back to them. I'm really sorry. Just that time's against us, and I really wanted to introduce our next speaker, which is Sue from Crowdfunder. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you very much. So I'm here under false pretenses, really, because we are not funders. Crowdfunder is not, we don't have any money. What we do have is a platform that helps you to crowdfund, and that's what I'm going to take you through very swiftly. I talk a lot, so I'm just going to have my phone up there and try and keep to time. We'll see. Yeah, you'll let me know, won't you? So yes, if I could have the first slide. Has anybody ever contributed to a crowdfunder? Have you ever contributed to somebody else's crowdfunder? Stick your hand up. So you know what crowdfunding is, right? It's raising the money that you need from a large amount of people in small amounts. And it's as old as the hills. You know, medieval artists use it to fund their art. The thing that makes it modern is the internet, because your crowd is as wide as you can reach. But there's a couple of little tips and tricks in there which I'll show you. If I could have the first slide, please. So when we talk about crowdfunding, at its simplest level, donation-based crowdfunding, I'll climb up Mount Kilimanjaro and I'll ask my mates to give me money. I'll ask the people that I already know. In effect, you're just using the internet as a kind of a cash machine or to collect money. If all you're doing is collecting money from people you already know, our advice is don't pay. So look for any site that is free to use. Do not pay to collect money from people you already know. You might have to pay the banks, but you shouldn't be paying the crowdfunding platform. If all you're doing on Crowdfunder is collecting money for a charitable cause for people you already know, it's free. But we will pass on the banking charges. What we really focus on is rewards-based crowdfunding. We're trying to change the conversation. So state what you're trying to raise the money for and offer something in return. That is quite challenging. And a lot of groups that I work with, particularly some from the more disadvantaged communities, will go, you're kidding, so I haven't got anything to give away. But one of the things we'll do is show you what we mean by that. It doesn't necessarily mean, well, it means all sorts of things, but give something in return, because if you've already heard it, there is not enough money to go round. Every fund is oversubscribed, and the whole point of crowdfunding is trying to get money from people who will give what they can afford, but if you can give them something in return, then it changes the conversation and it makes it worth their while too. So that's where we focus, rewards-based crowdfunding. The only kind of crowdfunding we do where you give away shares is what we'll do is a community share. So you might have seen that with a pub that's closed, that people list as a community asset. You can sell shares in it. There are some tax benefits to doing that. We do that, and you may have heard of organizations like Plunkett do it too. That's the only kind of equity crowdfunding we do. But if you've got a brewery and you need to raise a couple of million, you can do crowdfunding, but you'd have to use a platform like Crowdcube or Cedars, and they're merging anyway. So that's kind of crowdfunding in a whistle-stop tour. Next slide, please. It's hard work. Has anybody actually ever run a crowdfunder? It's hard work, isn't it? So the period of time that you're live with a crowdfunder, there is stuff that you have to do. So why would you bother? I might get Matthew to talk to you at the moment because he's crowdfunding. So if you have got any spare pennies, he's running a crowdfunder. The biggest reason that people crowdfund is because they get validation. They know that their community cares about something, or other people out there care about something. So when you get to the end of a crowdfunder, not only have you got the money, but you also have a crowd of people that support your idea. And going forward, the idea is that you stay in contact with them. It's not just about the money. I should have said money first because it's absolutely about the money. But it's also about building awareness. And one of the biggest misunderstandings about crowdfunding is, and you will see it on some of the sites, where people put up a page and they're expecting some millionaire somewhere to come and give them all the money they need. It does happen every now and again. We had Stormzy drop a pledge of 10 grand on a project a couple of years ago to help a child through university. Brilliant, but it doesn't happen very often. What happens most often is you start with the people you know and they help you spread the word. And by doing that, by identifying people who care about your project, then you're building awareness. And that's kind of like a mini marketing campaign. So it's one of the reasons why it's worth putting some effort in. What we also know, particularly for some of those organizations that might not be structured in the way that a funder can give you money, is that a crowdfunder will put you in a good position when you go forward. So if you're brand new on the blocks and you go through a crowdfunder, you raise the money that you wanted to raise, you spend it the way you were supposed to spend it, you evidence the results that you were setting out to achieve. When you then go and speak to an institutional funder, you've got a bit of track record behind you. So it puts you in a better position when you're approaching either a bank or some of the other funders. But it is hard work. Next slide, please. The thing about rewards-based crowdfunding is I'm giving you something in return. I'm not just saying to you, I need your money or else this thing won't happen. I'm involved with lots of projects in my village, and I get to the point that people see me coming and they cross over to the other side of the street because I'm going to ask them for money again. But with a rewards-based crowdfunding, I'm giving something in return. And everybody that you know, everybody that cares about your project has a part to play with a crowdfunder. Of course, if they've got spare money, you want their money, but actually you also want them to help you spread the word, to tell other people about what you're doing, or to contribute a reward. So I ran one in my village recently, and I went around all the businesses and said, normally people just ask you for a prize or a raffle. People who are never your customers ask you to give something away to a charity you may or may not support as a business owner. But if you give a reward to a crowdfunder, I'm going to tell the world about you. It's going to be on every Facebook mention. The local news will pick it up. The local local radio will talk about it because I'm going to tell them that you contributed this reward. So you know that show Ghosts? Have you ever seen Ghosts on the telly? That house is in my village. So I got them to give me 5 tours of the house. And now they don't need much publicity. But every time I talked about the crowdfunder, I talked about this place where Ghosts was filmed, and that you could have a tour of that if you donated to my crowdfunder. Didn't cost me anything. Publicity doesn't cost them anything. And the pledger, in exchange for the money they give, gets something back of value. So the whole thing hangs together quite well. And it encourages people to give, not just the people who can just give money, but the people who actually can't just give you money. You're going to give them something of value back, and it makes it easier for them to get involved. Next slide, please. you can have these slides. We've done quite a lot of analysis as to the impacts of crowdfunding. And what we know is that in over 80% of the cases, something else happens as well. It won't surprise you that when you start telling people about what you do, they'll come round the side and they'll say, let me volunteer, let me help you, let me donate stuff. And that doesn't just happen once in a blue moon. It happens most of the time. So there are some real side benefits. I'm going to skip through this slide and go to the next one. It isn't easy, and often you'll hit different blocks across at different times. So what I would say is if you're interested in it, go to crowdfunder.co.uk, press get started, and call me when you get stuck. We see about 300 projects a day on the site. Most people never call me because they don't get stuck, because our job is to try and help you when you need the help. So whether that's workshops or individual support or guides, there's a stack load of advice and help on the site. Press get started, call me when you get stuck. Next slide, please. This is my secret sauce. Whether you're crowdfunding or whether you're funding, whatever you're doing, start by writing down anybody and everybody who should or could be interested in what you're doing. Get it down on a piece of paper. Don't put the piece of paper away. Stick it on a wall, attach a pen and paper to it, and put it somewhere where people can contribute. And then once your brain starts going, what about? You start to build your network map. Who cares about what you're doing? And then they have a part to play, either by contributing, by helping you spread the word, or by giving you a reward. Once they're on your network map, how do you contact them? Do you have to call them? Do you have to email them? Is it enough to put it on your own Facebook page or your website? But actively make sure that everyone who's on your network map has been contacted. And then think about what they might like as a reward. My local uni crowdfunded a bike scheme. Their only rewards were beers in the uni bar. I wanted them to have bikes. I didn't want a beer in their uni bar. So think about who's interested, how you contact them, and what kind of reward they might be interested in. Start with the people you know. When Captain Tom was already at £500,000, why did people keep contributing? Because he had momentum, because it was a successful crowdfunder, and people wanted to be part of that. If your crowdfunder is sitting live at zero, even somebody who really wants to support you will go, maybe I'll have a look tomorrow and see. I don't want to be first. So make sure you get out of the gate with people you know, even if it's a small amount of money, even if you can get 10 people to give you £1 each, try and get out of the gate before you go live. And you can send a crowdfunder to your friends and say, if I crowdfund, do you know who might contribute? And your decent mates will contribute. Not much. None of us has as much money as we had 2 years ago before this nonsense. But yes, start with the people you know and spread out. People will pledge. Some people will pledge because they believe in your idea. Other people will pledge because of the rewards on offer. If you can make both things true, people will pledge more. We've got match funders on Crowdfunder. So funders will say to us, yes, of course, if you've got people coming to you with good ideas, if they can raise half the money, we'll give them the other half. Organisations like Sport England, who can support the big projects themselves, don't have a massive team, but want to support every grassroots sports club in the country, have given us £7 million to support grassroots sports projects. We also work with organisations like Trust for London, and they have funding on the site. Did I give you the URL? If you need to know what funds we've got on the site, you can email me and I'll point you to the URL. We list them all the time. I work with local authorities to get match funds from local authorities, so I'm always banging on their door to say, come on, match what's going on in your area. We do take some money. So if you're donating for a charity, for people you know, or for a personal cause, we don't charge. We always pass on the banking charges, which are about 1.5%. If we get you a match fund, we take 5% of whatever that match fund is. If you're a not-for-profit, we don't charge you. If you're a for-profit, we charge you 3%. Whatever you are, as you go through the site, we'll take you to a page that says, before you go live, these are the fees that we will charge you. would you like to proceed? So it is transparent and it is there, but we do charge. That's how we make our money. We've seen lots in Lewisham. We used to work with Lewisham Council a couple of years ago, so some really lovely projects. And if you search for Crowdfund Lewisham, you'll see some of them. You can copy them. You can copy their rewards, and you can see what kinds of rewards people have gone for and they liked. So Helping Hands Food Bank, I think I put one in twice, but they won't be able to tell because the slide will move. Keep going. Refugee Cafe, you might know some of these people, and you'll see how much they raised, and you'll see how many people contributed, and you'll see the comments of other people. So it's a really, really collaborative, out there kind of thing. Yeah, just some examples really of some of the crowdfunders we've seen here locally. Keep going. Next one, please. Nearly there. And I'm Sue, S-U, no E's in my name anywhere, S-U at crowdfunder.co.uk. If you get stuck, email me. I'm always slow because I'm out, but I will eventually reply. How am I doing on time? Ha! That gives me extra time for questions, doesn't it? Have you got any questions for me?
Okay, so let's go to Zoom first. Any questions there? So somebody's asking for a list of speakers and contact details. I think that's all fine, isn't it, if we give your email addresses? Great. Okay, so questions in the room. Anybody got a question for Sue? Yes.
How do you tell a good story? So I call it the shoulders up, shoulders down test. Sorry, what were you going to say? Yes. Hello, people in Zoom. Sorry about that. How do you know it's a good story? How do you tell a good story? The one thing about this room, you are all doing very, very, very different things. I guarantee you every single one of you has got an amazing story. Because by definition, the stuff that you're doing is great, isn't it? So it's about getting it onto the page, though. So my tip would be just start from the heart, write it down, and then stick it on a website, and then put it in front of a stranger. Ideally, a critical friend, somebody who will tell you straight, and then don't interrupt them, but watch their body language. And what I do is I say, can you have a look at my page? And they look at it, and you'll see them either go, and their shoulders will come up, and they'll go, oh, I really want that to happen. Or they'll go, if you see a frown or a scowl, note it down, figure it out. It's either you've not written it clearly, or they don't get it, or you've lost them. But you need to test it before you go live, and I think that's the best way. Just get them to read it and watch. But you are natural storytellers.
I'm going to come to John first and then Jonathan.
If you're crowdfunding, does that impact on whether you're getting a grant from another organization? So can you do it in addition to getting a grant from one of the other funders?
Okay, there's a question about whether you can crowdfund and apply for grants at the same time. We'll come to that in a minute. Jonathan? So there's a question about whether Crowdfunder runs an all or nothing target, which Sue will explain in a moment. One more question from somebody. Yep, go on. Yeah, it's the same question and a question about the Pay It Forward scheme. So we've got 3 questions. Can you remember them all?
Might not remember them. I might not remember them in order. Let's do the all or nothing question. That's a really important question. It's one of the technical details about how to crowdfund. So as you go through the site, that's one of the questions we'll take you through and help you come up with an answer. Basically, are you going to do all or nothing, or are you going to do a keep what you raise? And it's about the story. It's about the fact that if somebody comes to your page, will they ask that question? So if I'm crowdfunding to buy a £5,000 oven for my new restaurant, What do I do if I only raise 2.5 grand? And that's the question that anybody who's going to fund you will ask, whether it's an institutional funder or Joe Public. So you don't want them to ask that question. Even in their mind, you don't want them to go, well, hold on a minute, what happens? So sometimes if you're crowdfunding for a thing and if you don't raise the money, you can't do it, you've got to do an all or nothing. But if you're a charity running a food bank or helping the Afghan refugees as they arrive, every penny counts. So you do a keep what you raise. But the decision needs to be what makes sense and what won't make your funder ask. There's one thing about that, though, which is if you get a match fund, what we've really been able to do with our funding partners is say, you can still do a keep what you raise, but in order to bank that match fund, you have to have hit your target, because most funders will want you to have hit the target in order to take the money. So the pay it forward, we work with loads of local authorities and the GLA to save as many small businesses as we possibly could. So it was incredibly flexible because we were just trying to, we wiped all our fees and we were just trying to save the country's small and micro businesses. What was the other question? I've forgotten it. Oh, can you do it at the same time as you do? It depends how much energy you've got. So we would suggest that you crowdfund for 4 weeks, and every day you've got to do something. You've got to be spreading the word, you've got to be contacting those people. If you've got the energy to do that and apply, absolutely. It's not up to me to tell you whether your idea is crowdfundable. It's not up to me to stop you. We want to see you funding. So yeah, if you've got the energy to do it, do it. And get a team. Get more than one person to do it, because you know, you kind of get to the end and you think, thank goodness that's over, because it does take some energy.
Okay, we're going to go into a short break. Yeah, okay, so we've got Alex from the Arts Council. Now bear with us, because as I say, this is coming through on Zoom, and so we just need to get the technology right.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Here we go, yep, we can hear you, Alex. So people are just finding their seats. But yeah, over to you, Alex. Thanks for doing this.
It might be smoother if I share my screen, I think, will it? Will that still show for everyone there in person? I'll do that anyway. Let me know if you can't see or hear anything that I've brought up. So hi everyone, my name's Alex. I'm a relationship manager from the Arts Council. I work in the London Theatre team. The Arts Council, as well as being a national development agency, is the main public funder for culture and creativity in England, distributing and investing money from government, which comes via the Treasury and the National Lottery. Like Heritage Lottery, with the word heritage, we recognise that culture means many things to many people. But in our definition, it means not just the arts, as it may have done for us historically, but also museums and libraries. So in describing this work collectively as culture, we include the full breadth of activity that we support. Our definition of creativity, we refer to the process of making, producing, or participating in culture. So in this presentation, I'll give you a brief overview of our 10-year strategy, Let's Create, which was introduced last year. And I'll talk a little bit about the priorities within that. It's a slightly strange time to be talking about the Arts Council and its work, because although we're a year into delivering this strategy, COVID-19 has delayed the introduction of some of the resources, funds and initiatives that will help contribute to it. So earlier this month, we published our delivery plan, which set out in more detail how we'll bring the strategy to life over the next 3 years. I'll briefly touch on some of the various ways we're going to resource the delivery plan. But towards the end of my presentation, I'll focus a little bit more on National Lottery project grants and some of the changes we'll introduce when that fund is relaunched in November. So we recognise that for some, including ourselves, actually Let's Create is a bit of a culture change. For example, and this isn't an exhaustive example, but while we've retained a commitment to the excellence of the work that we support, we're placing more emphasis on what you might call everyday creativity. So in other words, activities that don't always necessarily result in quote unquote works of art. And we're asking those we fund to more deeply reflect on and understand what their communities value. So Let's Create is articulated by 3 outcomes that are underpinned by a commitment to 4 investment principles, which I'll come on to. So the ways in which a project or activity is likely to contribute to one or more of these outcomes is what we'll consider first and foremost when making our funding decisions. And we'll use the investment principles as an additional steer, particularly for longer term funding relationships. So the 3 outcomes focus in turn on how people can develop personal creativity at every stage of their lives, how culture is created by and with people in their communities, and how it shapes the places in which they live, work, learn and visit, and the development of the innovative and collaborative international facing professional cultural sector that we think we're going to need over the next decade. So the first outcome focuses more on amateur and voluntary creative activity, including by children and young people and older people. And the third outcome looks at the professional cultural sector, including those seeking to develop a career in the creative industries once they leave full-time education. And then the second outcome brings together the first and third by considering how the professional and voluntary sectors can work together to help shape stronger cultural provision in towns, villages and cities across the country. So the 4 investment principles set out how our cultural organisations will need to develop so that they can better deliver the 3 outcomes. So under these principles, all the organisations we fund, and this is mostly related to our portfolio organisations, but also overlaps with all of our funding decisions going forward. Those organisations will be dynamic and fit for purpose, inclusive and relevant in the way they work and what they produce, champions of good leadership. They'll be ambitious and they'll seek to engage a range of communities, and they'll look to improve the quality of their work by consulting those communities on how relevant they are. And they'll lead in their approach to environmental sustainability and responsibility. Collectively, these organisations will support, the organisations we support will represent the diversity of the country, and individually they'll work in ways that are valuable to and valued by their communities, which will include creative practitioners and other partners. So in our delivery plan that we published about a month or so ago, these are the key investment programmes that we've set out for the next 3 years. And so you'll be familiar with some of these, and some of them will probably be more relevant to the work that you're doing than others. So I'll just touch on them briefly, but the national portfolio will include for the first time creative people and places. So this is a range of multi-year funded arts organisations, libraries and museums, including consortia and other groups of organisations working in partnership in specific places. So in Lewisham, for example, this includes organisations like Apples and Snakes, Carly Theatre and Spare Tyre. National Lottery Project Grants is a flexible fund investing in individuals and organisations to deliver a range of projects, which I'll talk more about in a second. Developing Your Creative Practice supports individual cultural practitioners to recover from the pandemic and focus on their personal creative development. Music Education Hubs, which is a grant holding responsibility we have to deliver some of the government's music education priorities, and a capital investment programme, which we've changed slightly for the next 3 years. It's less about us funding full projects to completion and more about us taking more of a developmental role, advice giving, brokering relationships and seed funding. And that will be to support organisations that meet our investment principles and or our ambitions around placemaking. So that will be physical adjustments to buildings and equipment so that you can operate post-pandemic, improve access, seize on technological opportunities and reduce environmental impact. Sorry if I'm going really quickly, but I've shaved some time already off by not showing you a video because I was a bit worried about time. But I guess if I blitz through it, we've got a bit more time to discuss things at the end. So this is National Lottery Project Grants, and it's our most responsive programme. Back when this event was organised in July, I would have possibly been more definite about the structure of project grants because we would have been a few months away from us relaunching. But as it is, we're kind of between two versions of it in that we'll relaunch, as I say, in November, and there'll be some new priorities that come along with that I'll talk through in a minute. But effectively, much of these principles remain the same. It's open access. There's no windows for application. It's our most responsive programme. It's most people's entry point, if you like, to getting funding from Arts Council. And it will continue to be high volume, in demand, but flexible in what we can support. And we focus on individuals and cultural organisations. It supports a wide range of practitioners, professional companies, non-professional groups, organisations of various constitutions, to undertake projects from small-scale research and development right through to large-scale national tours. And we'll continue to target, as I say, primarily individuals and organisations rather than focusing on those already in the national portfolio. So in November, we'll relaunch the fund. I can't talk too much about criteria because although I think it won't change dramatically, there might be some nuanced changes that we make in terms of eligibility and criteria. But what I do know is that we're introducing some of these changes. So we're looking to align the application criteria more with Let's Create, which is a slight shift from our old strategy, Great Art for Everyone, where there wasn't so much of a connection between our wider strategic objectives and the objectives of what was Grants for the Arts and is now project grants. We're trying to simplify the application process again, streamline it as much as possible, ask for information in as clear a way as possible. And that's based on some of the feedback we've had about, for example, the fact that the application jumbles up where we ask for data and where we ask for narrative, and then that can be quite confusing and time consuming if you're completing an application. And we want to target our advice giving to those who might not have previously engaged with us, so not entirely focused on people who we might not have already come across, but certainly that's where we want our focus to be. And we'll be rolling out additional resources, and this will be both on individual and group basis. So events like this to complement, for example, one-to-one advice giving sessions. We're going to increase the upper threshold of our small grants from 15k to 30k, and this is to reflect the increased cost of properly resourcing a project. And it will mean that we can make quicker decisions on more ambitious activities. And we're looking to improve support for individual artists, especially at the outset of their career. For artists, you can read different kinds of applicant, but we're, for example, looking at relaxing the match funding expectation so that you don't already have to be so far up on the rungs of the ladder, as it were, to be able to put forward a compelling proposal to us. And then crucially, if you're working with the library sector, we'll be supporting organisations to deliver against the 4 universal library offers. I've no idea how long this has taken. This is where you can find out more information. I can't see anyone on the screen at the moment telling me to stop. So this is where you can find out more information. I really recommend that you take a look at Let's Create. There's a couple of, I hope, digestible versions that run through what our intentions are with the strategy. And as I say, if project grants is the most appealing fund to you, it's very likely that reading Let's Create will be of huge benefit to understanding what we'll be looking for in any application that we support across any of the programs that I just mentioned. Thank you, Andy. I could talk a bit more about the scope of our investment, what some of the budgets are across these various funding streams, but you can find out all that on our website. I'm happy to discuss any of it now if that's useful. Or I can talk a bit more about the kind of projects we currently support, with the caveat that some of it might shift slightly between now and November. Thank you everyone for listening. Sorry I can't be there in person.
Hello, Alex, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Hi, Alex, it's Matthew from the GLA. We're going to ask our crowd here and people online if they've got any questions. Are there any questions for Alex? We have one at the back. Okay, Alex, I'm going to go through this, and I'm looking at you. And when I get something wrong, you can just shout me. So first of all, Alex, we're wondering what the Arts Council define as culture. Secondly, already it's gone. But look, yeah. Is your criteria? Is the sort of groups you're funding? Is that going to change over in the next round, as opposed to what's been funded before in the last 18 months? And there was something in the middle which was really important. I liked. Yeah. Yeah. Are you able to work in partnership with organisations to develop their funding bids? I think that's always something that I think has been a problem. But yes, that was a great point. Thank you. There you are. I've got three there. Alex, are you able to take those?
Yeah, sure. So the first one, what's our definition of culture? I tried to summarise it in the presentation. Really, the way we define it is just a way of us including, if you like, the work of museums and libraries, whereas I think historically we've been very much focused on arts organisations, and as some of you might know, we absorbed into our remit museums and libraries a few years ago. So it's not so much trying to define it beyond that. We've stated our definition on our website, but it doesn't go much beyond that, and all it does really is says that we acknowledge that there is no one definition. So sorry I can't be more inventive than that, but there was a question. I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the second and third question. Will we change who we fund?
Yeah, the sort of funds that you've given in the last 18 months. Do you think that kind of funding is going to change because of the inequalities that have happened during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we have, much like some of the other funders that have spoken, we have equality principles. The investment principles that I mentioned talk about inclusivity and relevance, and that's obviously about rebalancing representation. It's also about supporting groups of people who are currently underserved. So I think there'll be, in terms of the focus kind of post-pandemic, I think we'll be really keen to support organisations or activities that are trying to, for example, combat things like social isolation, combat things like not being able to engage because of restrictions on where people can go. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the question directly enough, but I think generally we'll still be looking to support organisations, professional or amateur, that have a kind of artist or an artistic process at the centre. Beyond that, I think we'll be really open to supporting all kinds, really. And what was the middle or the final question? Sorry.
the last one was about how directly you can work with organisations to develop their funding applications.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in the context of portfolio organisations and project grants, there are, for example, we publish a bunch of materials. We'll have some sessions for national portfolio organisations and anyone that's interested in applying for that give an insight into the application process and the criteria once we announce that early next year. And with project grants, as I say, we're about to launch a new kind of suite of advice giving mechanisms like this one, where we really want to try and talk to groups, because obviously that enables us to talk to lots of people at once. But we'll continue to also do the closer, I guess, developmental conversations with people who lead organisations or work in organisations or individuals that want to apply to us. So there's a range of ways that we can support the development of applications, but that doesn't ever overlap with the development of projects, if that makes sense. It's about the kind of things that we are looking for you to articulate, and particularly because Let's Create is new. I think we're really keen to, you know, to engage with people and find out if what they're doing aligns with what we want to do with the strategy.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Alex. Thanks. Okay, I think we're going to. Is there a question? One question? Yeah. Has the Arts Council supported other projects in other boroughs of culture? And I know they have. Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry, Alex, I can take that from.
Yeah, no. That's one of it's one of those things that kind of becomes an overlapping strategic interest of ours is when there's a fund like that underpinning a project.
Brilliant. Alex, thank you very much. And in terms of people developing funding bids, I'm sure your local authority would help look through any applications you're putting together. Wouldn't they? Yeah, I mean, I know they would love that.
Just to say quickly, I'm here on behalf of my colleague Gabriella, who has a relationship with Lewisham as a borough. So it may be that you can connect with her to find out about the kind of support that she might have tailored to Lewisham, if that's helpful. And Jess, in the chat, I'll drop you a quick response to your question about capital.
That's brilliant. Alex, I'm sure what we'll do is we'll get you back here at some point in the future to do an in-person session.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Thank you very much. Brill, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And I think we're going to move straight on to Simone from the Community the National Lottery Community Foundation Fund.
Yeah.
Simone, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, hi. Thank you.
Hi,
very
everybody.
much.
Sorry that I can't be with you all. I hope you're having a great event. Oh, I can hear myself. That's a bit weird. Okay, guys, I'll jump straight into it because I know we're a bit pressed for time. Can you see the presentation okay? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so as already mentioned, my name's Simone and I work at the National Lottery Community Fund. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the team that we have. So I'm based in the London, the South East regional team, and we have 3 teams that mainly cover London at the moment. We've got North West, North East and South London, which is obviously the team that most of you would be interested in. We have a new manager called Hannah Bennett, who's running that team now. And we have a few funding offers, which is myself. We've got Dawn, Jordan and Jemima as well. I'm sure you've already kind of known and heard a little bit about the National Lottery in general, but particularly at the Community Fund, we've kind of distributed around 600 million across the UK every year. And in 2020, the National Lottery Community Fund also distributed around 200 million throughout the emergency pandemic as a response. So our main vision for our product is around people in the lead. So it's similar to what you guys have already been hearing from what I've heard already. It's around, you know, ensuring that communities are at the forefront of your kind of development, design and delivery of your of the project. But it can also be a bit more further than that as well. They could be, you know, embedded within the organisation. That if you work with young people, they could be on your trustee board. So it's kind of making sure that those people that you're aiming to support have, you know, a very strong impact and have a voice within your organisation and the way you operate. And so that's what people in the lead tends to mean to us. We also look for strengths-based, so it's using those people and utilising the skills and the knowledge that they have and their experience. And connected. So it's about, you know, connecting with all the others around Lewisham Borough, making sure that your proposals complement each other and not necessarily duplicate. That's quite a big thing for us at the Community Fund. So our main priorities for England, and these priorities are focusing on two main strategic pots, if you like, but they're our ongoing rolling all the year round. So we've got the Reaching Communities, which is the strand I work on, and we've also got Awards for All. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a deeper dive into them a little bit later, but because they've got the same priorities, I'm going to talk a little bit about that first. So yeah, we aim to build stronger relationships. So we want to support ideas that are going to bring the people together. And obviously with Lewisham being the London Borough of Culture, I think, you know, there's lots of ideas that I can imagine will be coming through around that area. So it'd be good to kind of see them come through. We also focus on spaces and places, and, you know, that can be like a park, a community centre, but obviously off the back of the pandemic, it can also be an online network as well. It could just be like an online forum, or we've had funding requests for like Discords to be built and to support different groups using their services. So there's no kind of set remit in terms of what's a space and what's a place. It's very flexible. So I think it's good if you guys could identify what that means to you, and you can evidence that in your application. And we also really want to focus on early action to prevent problems. You know, them kind of ones that obviously help people achieve their earliest potential at the possible stage, and also kind of tackle, you know, the inequalities that are addressed in the community. In response to the COVID, we're still very much kind of not necessarily responding to the COVID pandemic, but we're also considering it as we move back, as we've moved back into Reaching Communities and Awards for All. So we're going to continue to support organisations, you know, that are struggling, that have been disadvantaged, and whether that's be through historical underfunding, or, you know, whether that's just been adversely impacted by the pandemic. So we're still supporting them kind of applications as well. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm going to talk about two main products, and those are the Awards for All and the Reaching Communities. And we can also support partnerships as well. So that comes under Reaching Communities. It's the exact same principles, the same kind of foundations, and it can also be within the local teams as well. So there's no differentiation between them two there. For Awards for All, this is our smaller pot of funding, and it's from up to £300 up to 10,000, sorry, for 1 year. And you can apply at any time, but you can only have one award within a 12-month period, so do bear that in mind. Applications are online, the response is just to one question, and Awards for All team have assured me they're aiming to get decisions out within the 12 weeks, so that's quite a quick turnaround for Awards for All at the moment. One thing I will say is that with Awards for All, they're not locally based as Reaching Communities, so it is a little bit of a different setup. However, they're the most inundated strategic pot funding that we have. They receive up to 84% of our grants, so they work at a really fast pace. And then for Reaching Communities, which is the strand that I do work on, we can fund, both strands can fund individual organisations and partnerships, and we can also fund unconstituted groups. I know that was a question earlier, so I just want to mention that we can do that. We would encourage organisations and support them to look into constitution, but it's not an actual mandatory requirement for our funding, so bear that in mind. For Reaching Communities, it's anything above 10,000, and we can support up to 5 years worth of costs. It doesn't have to be 5 years, but it can be. You can again apply at any time, and it's available online. If people have additional needs, please do contact us. You can reach out to me directly, or you can also contact our London and South East hub inbox as well. And we can have applications submitted through video format. We've had presentations, we've had various different ways. So, you know, please do mention if you do need additional support, because we will support with that. The kind of things that we do fund, it is very varied, and I'm happy to say that, I can't lie. So we fund direct costs and project-related costs. We also fund organisational development, and so this can be for various different ways. You know, we've had organisations request support because they want to transform their digital infrastructure. That's absolutely fine. That can come under organisational development. We've also had organisations want to do like a strength-based review of their organisation to help them create a more focused vision for their next planning year. So we can support lots of different ways around organisational development. We also fund core costs as well. So, you know, that kind of background cost that nobody really wants to touch, we will fund them. So please do have a look at that. And we fund fixed costs. And we do have capital costs as well. So we do have a capital support. It isn't a different fund, but you can apply for capital. So it could be refurbishment, or it could just be other costs associated with capital costs as well. So who can apply? As I mentioned earlier, we doesn't have to be a constituted group. You could just be a voluntary or community organisation as well. We obviously fund registered charities. We do fund constituted groups or clubs, not-for-profit organisations, CICs, and it's not on here, but we do fund mutual benefit societies as well. So if there's any of them in the room, you can also apply. We can't fund individual or sole traders and companies that pay profits to directors, shareholders, or members. We can't fund organisations that are based outside of the UK. And we do ask that organisations that are constituted, they have at least 2 trustees who aren't married, in a civil partnership, long-term relationship, living at the same address, or related by blood. We also can't fund or accept applications from organisations applying on behalf of another. So with us having a local approach and having a funding officer, we would rather work with the organisation to support them around, you know, articulating their idea. We won't necessarily make decisions for you, but we would definitely want to work with you and make sure that you can access our funding opportunities without having to support from another organisation. And that would be obviously different to working in partnership. So a little bit about our process. You can look at our website. We've got quite a straightforward website. There's a few different new strategic pots that I've opened that I want to flag. So we've got the I Will Fund, which works for young people as well. And we've also got the Grown Great Ideas, which is kind of new fund. It is, I think it's a minimum is 150,000 for that one, but it is longer term over 3 years, but it's worth having a look if we've got some new ideas that are very innovation based. It'd be good, you know, to kind of look at that kind of pot as well. So do check eligibility, and you can apply online, or as I said earlier, you can contact one of us to kind of get more support. We do ask for an initial idea, so it's not as, we used to ask for a lot of information, it's not as heavy as that now, it's definitely been reduced. We look for an initial idea, kind of a varied line on brick where you would spend the funding, how much do you want, and kind of how long you want it for. That would then be looked at by a funding team, and a panel would then make a decision whether it's unsuccessful or not. If it was unsuccessful, you do receive an unsuccessful email, or if we are supportive of the idea and we want to, you know, get to know it a little bit more, we will send you an additional information request. If you do receive that request, once you've returned that information, there is option to meet with funding officer. It's not actually mandatory, obviously, at the moment in COVID times, but, you know, we would definitely want to meet via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or have a chat at least to kind of get to know your organisation a little bit better. Once that's all being confirmed and processed and the information has been returned, it would then go to a final decision panel who would make a decision, and you guys would be informed of that once that's been agreed. So what we do definitely want to know about the funding proposal. We want to know like what your organisation does. We want to know what you want to do with the fund and where it's going to take place. It's important to, you know, differentiate between not just where you're based, but also where you're going to be delivering, because sometimes organisations deliver in different areas. So we need to kind of understand that. How you'll involve the community, and that's not just, you know, as I mentioned earlier, around the design and the development of the idea, but how you're going to continuously keep doing that throughout the rest of the project. It's worth kind of making a note of that in there. How you fit with local activities, so what organisations are delivering similar, is it duplication, are you working together, who's going to benefit and the difference that you make, so that's your impact, and, you know, how much you'll need, what you want to spend it on, and how long you would like that for. a little bit more. If you are pulled through for the second stage, we do ask for a little bit more in-depth detail. This can include like a full kind of proposal breakdown of activities. We'll ask for a full outline of the budget. We do look at your financial position a little bit more. And that's not to say that if you have a small income that you wouldn't be funded. That's not the case at all. And we'd also ask for a recent bank statement as well. If you are successful, we do a grant setup call. You kind of get your letter, you return it back to us, and then you work with your funding officer throughout the rest of the grant. We do like interim monitoring 2 times a year normally, and kind of things that you'd report on would be, how involved with the community, what differences have been made, what you're learning, and how you're spending the money, which is obviously key for us to understand. That's just a little bit about finding out more, and then we've got any questions. But I do just want to quickly flag, because I forgot to mention something, for Awards for All, at the moment, we are currently kind of prioritising smaller organisations. So if you are a large organisation, there is a chance that you will be unlikely funded for Awards for All. So do bear that in mind. There is a more of a priority focusing on our small kind of micro organisations at the moment. And that's it from me, guys. So any questions? I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're on mute, Andy.
Thought I was turning it on and I was turning it off. Okay, so we're nearly out of time. Well, in fact, we are out of time, but I just want to take a few questions if we can do that. Are there any questions online for us, Meg? Did you hear that you didn't, Simone? Simone, can new organisations apply for the Reaching Communities Fund or just Awards for All?
Yeah, they can apply for both. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. Any questions in the room? Are you completely overwhelmed? Okay. So, okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Simone. Appreciate you giving us the time. So, I hope this hasn't been too overwhelming. We've gone through a lot of stuff throughout the evening. What I would suggest is that you focus on one or two, probably one of the funds that you most related to in terms of the projects that you think you want to apply for, and go for that. And be in contact with them, read what's on the internet, have a look at the slides when we send them to you, and good luck with it. There are going to be more funds coming out in January. We'll be launching the second round of our Creative Change Fund. That's a good one to go for if you are a small organisation, because we've got 2 levels of funding, up to £1,000, up to £5,000. It is very competitive, but worth looking at. And as I say, there will be more funds coming out as we go along. Phoenix Community Housing have got some funds available at the moment if you're in the south of the borough. They've got, it's just a small amount at the moment, but for their next year's fund, they've committed the whole of their community grants budget. That's £100,000 for the south of the borough. So we're in a healthy position in terms of the funds that are going to be available. So I would encourage you to stick with it. If you haven't been successful so far, stick with it. I hope this has been useful. Yeah, as I say, good luck. I want to just say a thanks again to Meg and to Liam and to Ian, who've made the technology work tonight. So I think you should give them a round of applause. And thanks again to the presenters. So yeah, good luck with your fundraising and hope to see you again soon.